I'm going to turn to Ezekiel chapter 3, verse 4 this morning. He then said to me, Son of man, go now to the people of Israel and speak my words to them. You're not being sent to a people of obscure speech and strange language, but to the people of Israel, not many peoples of obscure speech and strange language whose words you cannot understand. Surely, if I'd sent you to them, they would have listened to you. But the people of Israel are not willing to listen to you because they're not willing to listen to me. For all the Israelites are hardened and they're obstinate. But I will make you as unyielding and hardened as they are. I will make your forehead like the hardest stone, harder than flint. Do not be afraid of them or terrified by them, though they are a rebellious people. And he said to me, Son of man, listen carefully and take to heart all the words I speak to you. Go now to your people in exile and speak to them. Say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says, whether they listen or fail to listen. Kind of dramatic, isn't it, that text? Anyone slightly worried about what we're going to be talking about today? Don't be worried. We're continuing our journey of exploration through the scroll of Ezekiel. It's been a strange and it's also been a slightly disorienting journey. Yet I think we've also seen a lot of insights here. As I prepared yesterday for this morning, I did wonder how we picked this theme. I have to remind myself of the steps that led us to this point, that it came out of a word that God gave to this community over a year and a half ago. God prompts us and we need to lean into his direction. The vision that we were given was about a river that was within this particular church, a river which flowed out through us and out into the wider community. And there was also a vision in Ezekiel of water flowing from the temple into the world. God prompts us and we lean into his direction. This is nothing mysterious. In a nutshell, these are common steps in the life of the Christian. It's what it means to be a disciple of Jesus, following the way. God gives us prompts. We need to be listening when he shows us the direction we need to go. When the time is right, it is up to us to follow his path, even when we're not sure where it will eventually take us. And we're not sure what we'll find at the end of the road. We just know that we'll be with him, and that's all that is important. This is life with Jesus. I know a few of you, quite a number of you, are looking expectantly for God's direction in your own lives. You've shared some experiences with myself and Antoinette. We're aware of a number of challenges that people are facing. These are the kind of decisions which keep you up late at night with worry and uncertainty. Sometimes you need to weigh your options. What direction is the right way to go? You toss and you turn. No matter what you're facing, remember, God goes before you. Our responsibility is to follow him every step of the way. And he's placed you in a Christian family. That's us. And our role is to support and encourage you, because when you follow Jesus, you're never alone. Okay, back to this scroll of Ezekiel. We've had 7 messages containing some complex and often challenging content. Let's take a moment to look at the flow of the Ezekiel story up to this point. Jerusalem was besieged by Nebuchadnezzar in 597 BC. When the city surrendered, the Babylonians, as was their practice, they took the king, his court, and the prominent citizens as hostages, and they sent them all into exile. Ezekiel was in exile, born to be a priest, but he's now without a temple. The nation's been humiliated, and it's been defeated, so that the people are in mourning. It's a time of crisis and upheaval. It's in this setting that Ezekiel is given this fantastical vision from God. He sees a throne chariot come out of the north, out of the middle of a thunderstorm. It's led by strange and, quite frankly, unsettling angelic beings. And sitting on this throne chariot is a divine figure, a being, a figure like that of a man. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. So in the middle of national and personal despair, God suddenly has Ezekiel's attention. And he opens his eyes to a higher spiritual reality. But the next thing that happens is that God shows Ezekiel a dark truth. There is revelation of an earthly shame. That the people of Judah, that's his people, they are appallingly corrupt and they're unfaithful. Using a vision of the holy temple, God reveals that there's idolatry hidden deep inside the walls, and it has to be dug out. Unclean and detestable things are kept in dark, locked rooms. It's quite a disturbing image for this priest, and it is disturbing to us even today. It reveals that the true crisis of Judah is not exile, it's faithlessness to God. The problem isn't the exile, it's their hearts. The most holy place has been desecrated. The people, they're the ones doing detestable things. They not only turned away from God, they actually think God isn't seeing what they're doing. So Ezekiel has a new understanding of the nature of what exile is all about. Then God hands him this two-sided scroll. It's covered in lamentations and woe. And he's told to eat it. He must receive the word. Quite literally, take on God's message within himself. To absorb it into his being. Let the message fill him and let it nourish him. Surprisingly, for such a tragic message, it doesn't taste bitter, but it tastes sweet like honey. Then, God gives Ezekiel a commission, a responsibility, another job added to his resume. First, he was a priest, then he became a prophet, and now he's going to be a watchman. He's going to watch over God's people. Because despite God's displeasure with them, he's not going to abandon them. Ezekiel, you're going to be the watchman. Be a guard. Be a lookout. Even if they don't listen to you, it's your responsibility to show them the truth. Even if they reject you, you have a critical responsibility, and I will hold you to account for your part. So let's look at this pattern that we've seen in the Ezekiel story. It starts with a vision, and a vision creates a revelation. A revelation produces understanding, and then understanding leads to receiving. And once he receives, he is commissioned. Does this seem at all familiar to you? Have you seen this elsewhere in the Bible, in the stories that we share? It seems to me you can find this in just about every situation where God interacts with his people. You'll find it in the faith of Abraham, in the life of Moses, in the work of Jesus as he teaches his disciples day by day. You see it in the calling of Saul on the road to Damascus. It is a pattern of deepening relationship with God. And it's actually how God restores his people. It's a path of spiritual discipleship and maturity. You can find examples in the Old Testament, and you'll see it in the New Testament. Vision, revelation, understanding, receiving, and then commissioning. You see, the vision captures your attention, makes you stop. And the revelation opens your eyes to things you haven't seen before. And once you see, only then can you understand. And then once you understand, you need to receive it. And when we truly receive it, we then become responsible for what we've been shown. You know, sometimes you need to get really close to a painting to appreciate its beauty. And that's what we've been doing in the last 7 weeks, working through Ezekiel. You see the fine brushwork, the attention to detail. And other times, you need to step back and just take it all in. Put aside the tiny details for a moment and just appreciate the unity of the picture God presents to us in His Word. How all the elements fit together. I think it's just remarkable. You know, as a follower of Jesus, you will have personally experienced this in your own life. Moments of vision, moments when you've had something revealed to you, that your understanding deepens, that you really receive a word into your heart, when you finally feel responsible for something. They don't need to be as dramatic as Ezekiel's. I mean, it's thunderbolts and lightning. Very, very frightening. You know, our interactions with God tend to be at a smaller scale day to day. There are dramatic moments, but most of the time, they're small. But they still are real encounters with the living God. And it's these encounters, it's these experiences, they transform you more and more into His likeness, day by day. Small steps. So what comes next in this cycle? After receiving and commissioning, what does God ask Ezekiel to do? Son of man, go now to the people of Israel and speak my words to them. You need to speak my words. Once God has given you a vision, after you've seen the revelation, when you understand, when you receive in your heart, when you accept the responsibility given to you, then you need to speak. There's a natural progression here. One experience follows another. Each step follows the next. And this is the path that we're all on when we follow Jesus. God repeatedly commands Ezekiel, you must speak my words to them. Eat this scroll, then go and speak to the people of Israel. Son of man, go now to the people of Israel and speak my words to them. Go now to your people in exile and speak to them. All this is in the first 3 chapters. You see, you can't have the vision and the revelation and the seeing and the understanding and the receiving and then taking responsibility and then keep your mouth shut. You have to speak. Now, here's an important bit. Don't just say any words. You need to speak my words, that is, God's words. Because God's words have the power to create. God's words have life. They hold literally the power of creation. You know, the story of creation is God speaking the universe into existence. Let's look at Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. These are all familiar statements to you. Now, the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. Beautiful image. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. To verse 6, and God said, let there be a vault between the waters. And in verse 9, and God said, let the water under the sky be gathered together in one place, and let the dry ground appear. And God said, and God said, and God said. Just words, only words, but they're words of life, and they're words which literally create life. You know, I have this habit on a Saturday morning. After I wake up, I read the world and local news before I actually start my day. I think there's a long tradition of dads reading the Saturday morning paper. That doesn't exist anymore, but now we all do it online. Now, thinking about it, and my dad, he never had this habit. And perhaps now I have a clue now that I think about it. You know, we often look to those who are examples in life, and we see what they did, and we say, well, I want to do that myself. But we should also note what they didn't do, because the things that they didn't do allow them to do the things that they did. So yesterday I spent 45 minutes reading various articles, one by one, by one by one. And at the end, it really left me unsettled and feeling kind of empty. I don't know if you've ever done that. I came away with no greater wisdom or insight or understanding. Worse, it left me kind of sad. There's such little hope in the news. There are a lot of empty words. There's hollow and manipulative words. Society is increasingly divided. Few words are gracious or understanding. There are a lot of selfish and insincere words. There's angry attacks. There's self-righteousness. People are full of words, and hardly any of them are words of actual life. Now, I'm not arguing we should disconnect from society and go live in a monastery. This is our culture. We need to be involved in it. But wow, it's a red-hot mess, in case you haven't noticed. When people, they worship at temples of their own making, temples to money, to lust, to self-righteous ideology, it's really no surprise that detestable things happen in the eyes of God. That's what is happening in our world today. I'm not saying anything new. Jesus told us we're not of this world. Just want to remind you that what we see right now is a story even older than Ezekiel. The world is in desperate need of more of God. It needs more of the blood of Jesus. It needs more of the work of his Holy Spirit. And I think it needs it in a hurry. You know, when God speaks to us, back to our text, there's this inevitable temptation to sometimes use our own words. I don't mean that it's not us speaking. It's our mouth, right? It's our language. We're in control of what we say. What I mean is there's this kind of natural inclination to occasionally slip in some of our own thoughts on issues. You ever done that? Slip your opinion in there? But instead of saying what God wants you to say, we say what we want to say on behalf of God. It doesn't work very well. It's misguided good intentions. And it can get worse because sometimes it comes from a place of self-righteousness or anger. And if it's not God's anger, then it's wrong. It can even turn people away from the truth because there really are words. They're not God's words. They're not words of life. It's kind of tricky. We see something like this going on in Ezekiel later in the chapter. Let's look at verse 24. Then the Spirit came into me, this is Ezekiel, and he raised me to my feet. He'd fallen down. And he spoke to me and he said, "Go, shut yourself inside your house. And you, son of man, they'll tie with ropes. You will be bound so that you cannot go out among the people. I will make your tongue stick to the roof of your mouth so that you will be silent and unable to rebuke them, for they are a rebellious people." Sometimes I think God should also stick the tongues of our mouths to they're moved when we want to reply out of our own anger and feelings. So God makes sure to keep his mouth shut. Ezekiel, I want you to speak, but it has to be my words. In 27, but when I speak to you, I will open your mouth, and you shall say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Let's look to Jesus. He's our greatest example. He was both Son of Man, and he was also the Son of God. How did he speak? In John 8:26, I have much to say about you and much to judge, but he who sent me is true, and I declare to the world what I have heard from him. He only says what he's been told. John 12:49, for I do not speak on my own. I'm sure he could have said a lot, but he doesn't speak on his own. But the Father who sent me commanded me to say all that I have spoken. He's a great example. John 14:10, do you not believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? The words that I say to you, I do not speak on my own authority, but the Father who dwells in me does his works. The scroll of Ezekiel is, on the surface, a collection of 6 visions. It was given to his prophet over 22 years during the Babylonian exile of Judah. It's very important for historical reasons, for the spiritual significance it has to the overall story of God restoring creation. It's also a great part of the great arc of history and God's revelation through his word, which everything points to Jesus Christ, his Son. So it's not really a story about Ezekiel, but we do see him a great deal. Ezekiel is part of the story. This son of humanity, this Son of Man. If you think about it, he's intimately involved. And what to me this says is something remarkable that we see all through the Bible. God uses people to be a part of his story. The Bible is about God's story, but he uses us. He desires you, he desires me to be involved in his story. And by becoming participants in his story, we are transformed by the very same story. We're changed by vision and revelation, and then understanding and receiving and responsibility, and then speaking. We allow the story to change us, and in doing so, we join into the greatest story of all. God bless you, church.